mona bapasi ya boye Nale koloba na tase na biso yo matukona nino wanga ninga boye Pase simbinga motema mama alingi boye Lokutana ya mabe mama masumu double Olinga moto zalili sumute pona nino driblenga boye yormatu Baemba balemina koyemba likolo na yotika enzongo Bapesaka motema ndenge nini yormao double
At this time to say a quick hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another exciting edition of the program Ashford God Live on this beautiful Friday night as we come to you from Detroit. It is about 35 degrees in Detroit. We're live from downtown Woodward and Jefferson in downtown Detroit. It feels great to be back home. I know some heard the name, some heard people talk about them. You've gotten the opportunity tonight. This is yours truly, the brother who doesn't eat iron, but he's definitely stronger than a lion. Ash for the Giant, the Nagilomi Galway. Welcome.
Hey.
Hey, listen, don't be selfish tonight, okay? Share the video, invite a few friends, because we are going to have all kinds of fun tonight. I'll be Brahima Binda. It's been a long time, my sister. Hope all is well tonight with you.
Oh, music guitar.
And that's right, just in case you're celebrating your birthday today, we'd like to say congratulations. And let us show hope that you like to see many more birthdays to come. Okay, tonight we have a special guest in studio, Mr. Samuel P. Jackson. This, in fact, our special guest tonight. Right about now, ladies and gentlemen, please join me as we welcome Mr. Volcano SHELTON, the most eruptible. What's up, my brother?
Well, listen, we happy to have Samuel in studios because, you know, the issue in the country, especially, you know, the economy, with his expertise, he will be here tonight to, you know, break down some things. What could we do, you know, a little different to enhance production in our economy so that we can become vibrant again? But actually, it's good to hang out. You know, it's Friday, the end of the week. It's cold, really cold. So when you talk about 35 degrees on your end, I didn't look at the weather before coming in, but it's cold. And what better place to be than indoors on Bridge Radio Africa?
Now, with Mr. Jackson being a veteran, what do we hope to hear from him tonight regarding the proposed no banknotes?
Well, you know, in my own research, all it does is it causes inflation. You print more money, you throw in the economy. It doesn't do anything if you're not producing or exporting as a nation. So with his expertise and background in economics, I would think that what my expectation from him as he listens backstage is to set the tune. Let's talk about why the economy is where it's at. And let's talk about whether printing all these banknotes, the first batch of banknotes got missing, $16 billion. Here we are with this new governor of the bank trying to, you know, have $27.5 billion printed. So continued infusing of money in the economy does not do well. It only looks like the people have purchasing power. But if there isn't the goods and services provided, then what good is the money, you know? And one thing about money, if it's not spent, it's no good. You can have money all dress in a money suit, if nothing to buy, is of no good, or if no service to buy is of no good. So I will hope that he would lay up those things. And then the last part in the discussion would be, what can this government do to enhance the economy outside of just always trying to print money? And my last thought is it really to print money, to increase potential in the economy, or is there another ploy for them to print money and then harbor them in their homes and build houses, buy properties, and the Liberian people continue to suffer?
Okay, well, the government of Liberia, through its central bank, is proposing to print $27 billion in new banknotes. The proposal says the cost of the printing is $27 billion. Now, from 2016 to 2018, the Central Bank of Liberia claimed it infused $16 billion of new banknotes into the Liberian economy. Now, two reports written by Crowd Associates, an American company chosen by USAID, and the Presidential Investigation Task Force, questioned how the $16 billion was infused into the economy. Last year, the Central Bank of Liberia printed $4 billion. The central bank says most of the money has been infused into the banking system. Now, with $20 billion infused over the past few years, which caused double-digit inflation, saw depreciation of the Liberian dollar, and reduced the purchasing power of the Liberian people. Now, can printing an additional $27 billion provide the needed liquidity to the banking system and keep inflation in check? How will printing an additional $27 billion support Liberia's economic development? The main question on everybody's mind is, should the national legislature authorize the Central Bank of Liberia to print an additional $27 billion in new banknotes? To help us answer this question, we are pleased tonight to have in our studio today the veteran economist and social activist, Samuel P. Jackson. Mr. Jackson holds undergraduate degree and graduate degrees in banking, finance, economics, and quantitative methods from Pace University in New York, Johnson & Wales University in Rhode Island, and the American Institute of Banking in New York. Mr. Jackson is currently a student scholar at the world's famous London School of Economics and Political Science, pursuing a Master of Science degree in Cities with special emphasis on infrastructure and social equity. Mr. Jackson, welcome to Bridge Radio Africa.
Thank you very much, Ashford. Those are very nice, kind words of you, and I really appreciate what Bridge Radio has accomplished, being the platform for a vibrant discussion of ideas. So I'm hoping and praying today that we can have a very good discussion and we can help to provide a roadmap for economic recovery. Because, Ashford, we haven't recovered yet since the war, economic recovery. We're still trying to recover to where we were in 1989, where we lost about 2003, over 90% of our productive output. So we're still trying to climb out of this very steep hill. And hopefully some ideas will come either from me, the audience, to see how we can move this country forward.
Well, we met last month in Liberia. As a matter of fact, you were very hospitable for the invite. I ate cassava leaf at your house. And then following that, you had to go to South Africa, then back to the U.S. Why don't you walk us through when you left Liberia to South Africa before coming back to the U.S.?
Okay. As a student scholar at the London School of Economics, the special program I'm in is called the Urban Agenda. And the Urban Agenda tries to provide solutions to problems facing cities. More than 50% of the world's population now live in urban centers. And there are special and peculiar problems that affect those urban centers in terms of socioeconomic problems, infrastructure, health, and environment. So my school was looking at housing adequacy in Cape Town, in an informal settlement in a place called Cape Town. Cape Town, you all know Cape Town with Table Mountain and all of that. But there's this, with all the wealth in Cape Town, there's a lot of informal settlements and a lot of slum communities in that area, as in most urban centers of the world. So we're looking at the housing adequacy, you know, in Dunoon. The second project that I'm working on now is we're looking at the environmental hazards and risk in Freetown. The mayor of Freetown, Comfort Akisoya, asked the London School of Economics to support her efforts in providing some solutions to the environmental problems in Freetown. So I'm very, very glad. And for Liberia, what I've done a couple of studies on Liberia, the limited access to electricity in Monrovia and how that undermines poverty reduction and social cohesion. And right now I'm reviewing a document that was done by Habitat for Humanity also, and some conservation groups on 4 slum areas in Monrovia: West Point, Loken Town, Doe Community, and Peace Island. So that is where I am. And hopefully, you know, my group this time, when we did the Cape Town study and the presentation, we got a high distinction. Hopefully we can support the people in Freetown to overcome some of their environmental challenges. You know, there was a mudslide in Freetown, remember 3 years ago, killed 1,000 people. Freetown is just almost like Monrovia with a lot of wetlands, swamps, and of course now Peace Island is also high up on a hill. So we're looking at possibility of erosion, the sea erosion in West Point. Those are all things that, you know, nations have to overcome. And I'm very pleased that the LSE faculty believes I have the acumen and the ability to help to solve some of these global problems. So thank you very much.
Fantastic. Now, let us just jump straight into this. Mr. Jackson, should the national legislature authorize the Central Bank of Liberia to print an additional $27 billion in new banknotes? Tell us why or why not.
Okay. The question is, why are you printing $27 billion in banknotes? What study accompanied? You can't just make a proposal to the national legislature without a technical basis for that proposal. And what are some of the needs that would be served by printing $27 billion? You have to look at the structural problem first of all. My last analysis I did on the monetary aggregate, the total money supply in Liberia, at the end of 2019, we saw that only 5% of currency in circulation was within the banking system. There are 2 kinds of money, money in the banks and money outside. So M1 is within the banks, and then of course the combination of the M1 and M2, which is the currency in circulation plus the money in the bank. Money in the bank consists of your what you call your checking account, which is your demand deposit, and your savings account, which is called the quasi money. Now imagine now you have 9 banks and 93 branches, and they only have about 5 to 6% of your total monetary aggregate, your currency in circulation outside of the banking system. The last time they asked the national legislature to print, they didn't even get an approval. They went willy-nilly and printed $16 billion. And the 2 reports are very clear. The Crow report, especially in section 3.2, it says that there's no documentary evidence that how this money was infused into the banking system or the financial system. So that is still outstanding. In every paragraph of that report, it basically says this needs more investigation. So it requires a forensic audit. Unfortunately, there has been no forensic audit, and we're going into the 3rd year of the Crow report, which was done in October of 2018. Then you have also the issue of the mop-up, the $25 million mop-up. That was also accompanied by a lot of controversies. I'm sorry, guys. It was also accompanied by a lot of controversies and those controversies remain unsolved. In fact, in one of the paragraphs of the report, it said that 5 million of the 25 million, the central bank could not give account where that money was spent or how that money went. So you still have those things standing, okay? So in the last 4.5, 5 years, you printed $20 billion. In 2016, the monetary aggregate was about $10.83 billion. So if you add the $16 billion to it, you're talking close to about 20, what, 20?
Almost going 30.
Yeah, well, go over like $27 billion.
Yeah, that's almost 30 billion.
Yeah, okay, okay. But you know what they said, Shelton, that they have burned, they have replaced $4 billion. So let's subtract that. So you still talking around $24-25 billion within the monetary aggregate. Where is that money? 95% of that money is within the informal sector. Okay, people who don't put money in the bank, or with the large importers and large businesses that don't use the banking system. So you didn't solve that with 20 billion, and the first $16 billion almost wrecked our economy because inflation went up to almost 40% and purchasing power greatly reduced, and was a lot of drag on the economy. Over the last 3 years of the Weah administration, there has been zero economic growth, in fact, negative economic growth. There is a linear relationship, a very close relationship between economic output, which is the GDP, and the money supply. You can't have GDP contracting and at the same time trying to put more money in the bank. Then the central bank has to make up its mind whether it's engaging in a contractionary monetary policy or an expansionary monetary policy. You engage in a contractionary monetary policy when there is excess liquidity within the financial system, and you want to take money out. So the central bank has been issuing what they call T-bills or repurchase agreements. And Samuel Twer on one program said over $12 billion have been issued by the central bank with a coupon rate of 25%. So the question that needs to be asked, Mr. Twer, or actually the central bank, Mr. Twer is chairman of the economic management team, he needs to answer is, who and how is income earned by the central bank to pay 25% on $12 billion? Okay, so now, those are questions that need to be asked.
Now,
until those questions are answered, okay, we have to say that printing $27 billion at this particular time does not make any sense. As a matter of fact, it's going to cause inflation, reduce purchasing power, and will undermine economic development in the country.
Now, I know Shelton will come in after this. You just talked about $20 billion that was infused into the economy. Now, Mr. Jackson, do you believe the issue of no money in the banks can be solved by printing $27 billion after this? And Shelton, you can come in.
Okay, no, it cannot be, because look, you have only 5% of the monetary aggregate within the banking system, mostly the currency in circulation. Okay, it's out of the banking system. That you have to analyze and ask yourself, why do we have that peculiar situation that exists in terms of, if you look at the West African monetary zone, and if you look at the Francophone zones, only 22% of currency in circulation is outside of the banking system. So the first thing that tells me, when you have a large volume and large magnitude of money outside the banking system, there's an issue with trust. People don't trust the banks. And why don't they trust the banks? They don't trust the banks because of two things. Operational inefficiency. I mean, the banks, when you go get your money, you don't have ready access to money. Shelton and Ashford, there are three reasons why people put money in the bank. The number one reason is safety. You don't want people coming to your house in the night, putting a gun to your head and taking your money, right? So you put it in the bank as a big degree of safety. The second reason you put money in the bank is for liquidity, to have ready access. Anytime you need your money, you need to purchase goods and services, you get sick or whatever, you need to have access to your money. And the third money for people who save is to have an income on their money, right? So if the banks provide only safety and they're not providing liquidity, and necessity is the mother of invention, then people will try to sacrifice safety to have liquidity so they can have access to their money. And that's why there's no money in the bank. The other reason why you have the problems within the banking system is that there is something called capital inadequacy. The central bank requires all banks to have minimum $10 billion capital. And that capital is basically in land, equipment, and it's a small amount of liquidity. The way the bank gets money to operate, it depends upon deposits. So you have a huge amount of deposit. So you have some checking accounts and some savings account. Then the bank uses your money by lending it out. And when bank lends money out, it creates money and expands economic output. Okay. So the banks are unable to provide those kind of services because they are capital impaired. How did they get capital impaired? 17 cents out of every dollar goes in the reserve, goes to the central bank. And the central bank keeps it. And this is a ratio that is decided based upon economics and monetary, all kinds of models that countries built. Some countries have higher reserve ratio and some have lower reserve ratio. Liberia's reserve ratio is just about average. Okay. So the central bank gets 17 cents of that money. And what does the central bank do with that money? The central bank can reinvest that money in fixed income securities, or it just holds that money because the central bank is the clearing bank. When you write a check on each other, it goes to the central bank, and then the central bank debits or credits you depending upon whether you wrote the check or you're receiving the check, right? Now, what that reserve has not been utilized properly by the central bank. The government of Liberia has been borrowing that reserve. Remember, the international community said one time, the IMF said that there was a losing fiscal stance, and it prohibited the government of Liberia from going to the central bank for overdrafts. These overdrafts come out of reserves. Now, over the last 3 years, over $65 million have been borrowed from commercial banks. And then the central bank has also been getting overdrafts and other and been granting credits to the government of Liberia. And then historically, between $200 to $300 million, they call these legacy debts, have been accruing from the central bank since the central bank was formed in the year 2000, more than 20 years ago. And those monies have not been paid, and they have been just there, they're dormant. In fact, the collectability is almost zero. So the central bank is capital impaired. It needs to be recapitalized. The other issue that is really hammering the commercial banks is the high degree of what we call non-performing loans. Between 17 to 21% of loans remain unpaid, either the capital or the interest. So that is the main problem that you're having. Printing $27 billion is not going to provide increased capital to the banks. It's not going to solve the issue of the capital impairment of the central bank, and it's not going to improve the operational efficiency of the banking system. The first thing you need to do is to find out how you can recapitalize the banks. The banks are undercapitalized. You need to go and tell the banks, you made some very bad credit decisions. Your underwriting criteria to lend money to a government that is not credit worthy, that's $65 million there. You have to find a way to eat it. Okay? It may not be a politically correct way to do it, but you have to sit down with the boards of directors and the top management, the owners of these banks, and say, your people operating here in Liberia, they did not follow prudential banking guidelines. They have these outstanding, and they're capital impaired, and they are insolvent, because insolvency means the banks don't have money to pay depositors. And a deposit is a liability on the book. Compare that to the assets of the banks on the book, which are the loans that they made. If you look at the loans that the banks made, if you do an aging of the receivables, you will see that the collectability of these loans are very, very low, even though they are mostly collateralized, but the probability of getting that money. So there should be major write-offs. That's how it's done in serious countries. When it's gone a certain amount of years and the loan is not performing with interest and capital, the banks have to eat it and go after the
borrower,
the assets, go after the collateral. Okay. Now imagine the banks now will become the largest real estate owners in Liberia if they did that. So there's a certain amount of what should I say? There's a certain amount of a challenge going that route. Okay. But Liberia's financial and banking problem cannot be solved with printing more money. It has to be solved with strengthening the banking system. The other thing that the government has been talking about is to digitize the payment system. You cannot digitize the payment system without a ICT infrastructure, because you need a relationship between the telecoms, which is the cell phone companies, and the banks. And you have to build a platform, and you have to build redundancies within the system. Okay. So now, if you are going to digitize the economy, digitize the payment system, you have to increase the points of sale. So, for example, businesses in the country like supermarkets, restaurants, dry cleaners, and other businesses have to set up a digital payment or digital payment acceptance platform, Visa, MasterCard, or mobile money. And that would take some time. Okay, I know that the quantum of digitization is increasing. The digital payment system is increasing. I saw a huge amount the other day, and I don't know it right out of my head. But so the banking system, the financial system, okay, is not healthy. And I know that for a fact. But if you read the central bank annual reports, it always says that the banks have adequate capital. And when they say they have adequate capital, because they're looking at the value of the assets of the banks on the book, they are now looking at collectability of those loans. So that is the Liberia's major problem. It has an unhealthy banking and financial system.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So Samuel, someone is saying why we didn't invite an economist from the CDC government to kind of probably rebut what you're saying, if that would be the case. But I believe that you may have had some kind of interactions with the people that are running the country from the economic standpoint, the banking sector, and all of that during your last trip to Liberia. Did you discuss some of these pertinent things? Because you did experience the shortage of money. You were there when all of this was happening. And did you avail yourself to discuss these things and put forth, or were they receptive? Because that's one of the things we're finding. This government continue to sideline oppositions rather than bringing oppositions on board to help. If you guys just want to have their clique and run the country down the drain. So what did you do regarding your time in Liberia to help fix this problem?
Okay, I did better than that, Shelton. In 2019, I went to Liberia and I spent 6 months in Liberia. While I was in Liberia, I had several meetings with the members of the economic management team, and especially Minister Samuel Twell. And I sat down with him and I said for us to look at the economy and make a determination as to see what were some of the challenges and what are some of the things in terms of the priority of the government. So in our discussion, it was clear that money, the lifeblood of any economy, there was an issue with the monetary system. So my partner and I, a young man who was doing his PhD, we did a monetary study aggregate. And if any one of your listeners out there, if they want to get a copy of that, they can send an email to me at s.p.jackson@lse.ac.uk. Okay, what we did an analysis of the banking system. We wrote 44 pages, and these are the things that we discovered. Okay, our major findings was that $18.15 billion was infused into the Liberian economy between 2016 and 2018. And this, our calculation was based upon the PIQ report of 2019, okay? At the time the infusion was made, the total amount of Liberian dollar in the money supply was $10.83 billion, okay? We found out that the infusion resulted in the creation of more than $28.97 billion into the money supply, okay? Assuming that the CBL authorities, what they said about them burning $4 billion, okay? Now, we estimated that the infusion of the $18.15 billion into the money supply was illogical. It had no scientific basis. And CBL authorities intentionally ignored the quantitative theory of money. Let me explain what the quantitative theory of money is. The quantitative theory of money says there has to be a very close relationship between economic growth and the money supply. Between 2016 and 2018, when that quantum of money was infused in the Liberian economy, the Liberian economy grew by less than 2%, but the money supply in 2017, for example, grew by more than 47%, okay? Now, average economic growth rate between the critical period was 0.7%, okay? And then 4% in 2016, 46.9% in 2017, and 18% in 2018. Reflecting an average growth rate, okay, in the money supply of 23.4%. Okay, so now, what does that cost? Okay, you have to look at when you print money, you have to have income from that money. They printed the 16 billion. There was no income reported from the central bank in terms of what we call exchange rate income, and we calculated that over $130 million of senior rich income should have been received. Okay, now, so now we give them a list of recommendations. Okay, we said they should consider rationing foreign exchange for the most essential imports. They should monitor mispricing and transfer pricing of exports, and they should increase the transactional demand for Liberian dollars by requiring the pricing of more goods and services in Liberian dollars, increase the proportion of payment of taxes in Liberian dollar, and pay a higher proportion of Western Union and MoneyGram in Liberian dollars or mobile money. Okay, encourage the creation of point of sales. I told you about that in businesses to accept electronic payments such as mobile money, MasterCard. And all of these things happen because there are three parallel financial systems that have been developed in Liberia: the Lebanese, the Indians, and the Fulas. They are the largest recipients of Liberian dollars. Look at, for example, the petroleum importers, the rice importers, the largest importers. They receive Liberian dollars. What do they do with the Liberian dollar? They don't put the Liberian dollar into the banking system. Okay, mostly, they keep the money. They keep that money because it is inefficient for them to go. They cannot be dealing with the issue of no money when they want to do operations. So they keep that money. And they trade that money amongst themselves. When they trade that money amongst themselves, what they do is basically they kick the formal banking system to the side. Okay? Now, but there are other structural and functional anomalies that Liberia has to deal with. Forget Shelton, ASHFORD GARLEY. We export about $600 to $700 million worth of 250 million in iron ore, about 150 million, 175 million in gold and diamond. Then we'll do rubber about 140, and then so forth and so forth again. Where do you think when the major companies, when they export, where does that money stay? Where does that money go? That money doesn't come back into the Liberian banking system. The reason why I know it doesn't come back to the Liberian banking system, because the 9 banks and 93 branches, their total asset is less than $1 billion. It's about 800 million. That's asset. Remember, they talk about the bad asset on their books, and the land and all of that. So it's not even liquid asset. Most countries in the global south, India, Pakistan, Nigeria, Ghana, and all those, they require something called export proceeds surrender. What is export proceeds surrender? Export proceeds surrender is when an exporter, mostly those who's doing mineral export, okay, and exporting primary commodities, they require them to repatriate or to surrender 100% of the export proceeds to the central bank. And what does the central bank do? The central bank gives them local currency. It increases the reserve of the central bank. It gives you the input capacity.
But is that happening?
It's not happening. Because the IMF told them, and they stupidly agreed that the people can just keep the money outside. We are the only country I know within the region that does not do export proceeds surrender. The reason why you do
Mr. Jackson, you know, there's one burning question here on my mind. Let's just say hypothetically tonight we stop remitting money to Liberia, all diaspora residents stop remitting money to Liberia. What happens to Liberia's economy?
Oh, it crashes. In fact, the $350 to $500 million you send every year, that is the lifeblood of the economy. Because you're not creating jobs, you're not creating income, and you don't have the capacity to promote aggregate demand for people to purchase goods and services. You have 80.9% of the population in the informal sector doing farming or they're selling in the street. That's just subsistence, right? So there's not enough money that is being created within that economy. The economy of 5 million people, the nominal GDP is only about $2.7 billion. But that is mostly spin-offs. But the real sector wealth, okay, the real sector wealth is about $900 million in real GDP. There's a distinction between real GDP and nominal GDP. Nominal GDP is the least inflated GDP. The real GDP is what the country actually produces, the income the country produces. So if 5 million people earning $900 million, look at the per capita portion of that. That's what makes us one of the poorest countries in the world. So we don't have a middle class. We don't have good aggregate demand. We cannot create industries because we cannot do domestic capital formation. There's no savings, and there's no savings, there can be no investment. So those are the base problems of the economy. But these problems are inherited. And I was hoping that there will be a government that will come in. The government will have a lot of passion. Government will get a lot of technical ability. The government will sit down with the international system, the IMF and the World Bank, and they will tell them, yes, we agree with the neoliberal Washington consensus model that you have imposed on us since 1945, but this has not worked. What we want to do, we want to stay within the ambit of the IMF and the World Bank, but we want to do some things that other countries are doing. So let's look at models like Ghana. What Ghana does, export proceeds surrender. What Ghana does not allow foreigners to trade wholesale or retail within the Ghanaian economy. You have to bring in $300,000 and hire 10 Ghanaians. But somebody can walk up the street from Lebanon or India and comes there and open up a small $1,000 or $2,000 business, and it grows to a multi-million-dollar business. The Ghanaian economy protects. It has protectionist policies. There's a book I want people to be looking at. It's called Taking Away the Ladder. When these Western countries Northern Europe, America, they all have protectionist policies to protect their infant industries and to protect the wealth of their people before they open it up to competition. Countries have what we call restrictions on foreign direct investments. You cannot open certain businesses in certain countries if you're a foreigner. I cannot own a newspaper or a television station in the United States. I cannot drive a taxi in Mexico. I cannot open a retail store in Ghana. There are restrictions, and these restrictions are designed to preserve the wealth of the country until you reach to a certain stage, then you can open up the economy. So, but this neoliberal, liberalized economy, this is complete nonsense because Liberia has not reached that stage for its productive processes to be competitive and for its capital to be competitive with other countries.
Now, Mr. Jackson, it has come into the public domain that the WIA administration owes the commercial banks about 65 million United States dollars, something you mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. Now, we know the Liberian government has what you call dormant assets, like the Duke Hall, the Unity Conference Center, the Spring Spain Airport, etc. Now, given the fact that this government is unable to pay the banks, don't you think it would be wise that this government put together a very enticing assets package worth about $100 to $200 million in net value to an investor for $65 million to mitigate the liquidity crisis?
That's peanuts. That's peanuts. If the Liberian government is serious today, it can raise $10 to $15 billion on its mineral assets alone. You want me to show you how it can be done?
How so?
Great. The iron ore assets in Liberia alone, Wologisi is between 10 to 25 billion tons. Putu in Grand Jile, your county, is about 4 to 7 billion tons. The Western Cluster, which includes the B Mountain, the NIOC, and Bowman Hills, is about 1.8 billion tons. Okay. The current price of iron ore, FOB, Rio de Janeiro, a center fee, is about $150. Multiply that, let's use an arbitrary figure of 10 billion. That's $1.5 trillion worth of assets sitting in the ground. Our gold assets, we got about 10, 15 to 20 million ounces of gold sitting down in the ground. We have other assets that are sitting down in the ground. So
you show that sitting down in the ground when we hear that WIA and his brother-in-law, they're all pulling the gold out of Grand Creek County and Sano. You sure we have anything left?
But okay, but let's basically know that it takes a lot of time to dig up 20 million ounces of gold. The capital equipment, the labor, the intensity of the operation, so they can't do it fast enough. By the time they leave in 2023, trust me, there will still be more left on the ground. But look at the value of the assets I just gave you. Remember one time my Minister Twe went to China, he came back and talked about mineral swap. At the time he did that in 2018, the market was not right. But right now the market is right. So Liberian government now and Liberian entrepreneurs can put all of your iron ore assets into one company, the National Iron Ore Company of Liberia. And you do a bidding system. You invite Brazil, Australia, China, okay? The global people who use steel and iron ore. And you say, look, this is the approximate value, okay, in terms of the indicative value, okay? Wologisi is only about 10% explored, but Putu is about 40-50% explored with 4.5 billion tons. NIOC, we know because it is a brown field, we know how much is there. We know how much is in approximate is in the other areas. So you sit down with them and you say to them, Liberia needs money for development. This is called the Angola mode. And then China does it very well. Infrastructure for minerals. They did it with Angola. Infrastructure for oil. That's why Angola, you look at Angola today, had top-notch infrastructure. Liberia has been granting its iron ore resources to companies that are technically efficient, companies that have no capacity in terms of financial capacity. Let's look at the last, since 2007, the first major iron ore mine under the Elling administration was given to a company called Delta Mining, which is a jewelry company out of South Africa that I knew because I worked in South Africa for many, many years. Then they also gave the Western Cluster, which is about 2.8 billion tons of iron ore. They gave it to a scrap company that came to Liberia, and then they dressed this guy, and then he found some investor. They spread $5 million, and they gave him this concession. And the same day that he was granted to him in August of 2011, he sold it to Sassagoa, one of the largest Indian steel companies. He sold it for $120 million without putting one shovel in the ground. Look at the same thing we did with oil. Orento, blocks number 11, 12, and 14. A guy called Arthur Eze, who I know very well, didn't have anything in 2004, came to Liberia. He wrote a check to buy the data, which was being stored at TGS NOPEC, Halliburton Company in Houston. He wrote a check for $10,000. The data cost $990,000. The check bounced, but he had the concession. So he ran to the Russian company called Luke Oil, and they gave him $46 million. Other companies came and did the same thing. So when Chevron came to Liberia, and Chevron wanted to participate in Liberian oil building, they bought blocks 11, 12, and 14 for over $200 million from this Nigerian company. And the state gave him 30%. The same thing with Broadway, with block number 13, you know, the whole controversy that was going on for County Shelton, with block number 13, the Russians wanted it, and the Americans wanted it. What they did, they gave it to ExxonMobil. They gave it to ExxonMobil, and they paid millions of dollars to Broadway. Broadway was brought in there by a guy called, I think his name was some kind of Alsop, Stuart Alsop, Liberian ministers who are working at the Ministry of Lands, Mines, and Energy. They formed their own company. They led Mobile Welly, the current president pro tem of the Liberian Senate, Albert Chair, and they led Dave Jala. They formed that Babati company with Broadway, and they sold it to ExxonMobil, and they got millions of dollars. Unfortunately, two of them who got the money, they're dead now, Mr. Dave Jala and Mr. Mobile William. But Mr. Albert Chair got millions of dollars from that transaction. So, yes, Ashford, Ducor is an asset. Hotel Africa is an asset. We have, and then EJ Raw Building is an asset. But those are peanuts compared to your mineral assets that are in the ground. And you just don't have the expertise, the creativity, and the innovation to develop something that you can take to the capital market. That is the point.
Now, Mr. Johnson, do you know about 10 of those dormant assets besides those that we just mentioned that could compromise of such dormant assets package?
But say that again, Ashford, I didn't get you.
You know about 10 of those dormant assets, all right, that could compromise of such dormant assets package. I know you named Ducor and EJ
Yes, but I'm saying Liberian government owns land in Monrovia. Liberian government owns, vast areas of farmland. Liberian government owns a lot of capital assets that can be packaged and sold and just get rid. But look, that $65 million you're talking about, if you remember about a few months ago, the commercial banks went to this Russian bank, Africa Export-Import Bank, which is stationed in Cairo. And the Africa Export-Import Bank agreed to buy this $65 million debt at a discount if the Liberian government would co-sign on a piece of paper, but the IMF said no. The IMF said no. So I'm understanding now the Americans are there, they're interested in solving this problem because the liquidity problem is affecting American operations in Liberia with the embassy and other institutions they have. So they're trying to solve it. But
Now,
the problem is,
Mr. Jackson, in your explanation about the Lebanese, the Fulanis, and the Indians, is that what retention of value means?
the retention of value?
Yeah, is that what it means?
No, it's not a retention of value. It's a creation of parallel financial structures unconnected to your formal banking system. They have their own bank. Look, if you want to go buy goods from China, you go to a Fula man and give him LD, and he will send you to another Fula man in Guangzhou that will give you the equivalent renminbi or yuan. And it's the same thing in Dubai or Cyprus or the United States. They have created their own parallel financial structures. Look, the banks cannot finance the level of imports that come to the country. If you look at rice importation, you look at sugar, you look at petroleum. Petroleum and rice are done by what we call collateral management. What's his name? Musa Belete there, Shaka Toure there, and what the other man named the guy from Conex there. They have Swiss bankers that finance the imports of petroleum and they put it in the tanks. And they have the agents there. When trucks come to buy the petroleum, the collateral managers there, they get the money. And they only give what's his name, man? I'm trying to think of this guy. I'll think of his name shortly. Musa then they just give them profits. They're not getting the bulk of the money. The bulk of the money is from the guy who financed the import. The same thing with Futa trading with the rice. The banks don't have enough capital to finance $1.2 billion worth of imports to the country. So these parallel structures are created to solve that problem. So if banks don't intermediate economic development, you can't grow. You have a stagnant economy. Banks have to provide credit, consumer finance credit, leasing credit. Banks have to be able to finance agriculture. Only 4% of bank credits go to agriculture. You don't have any long-term funding within the banks to do mortgage funding or agriculture funding because agriculture has a longer gestation period. So the banks are totally dormant in our country. There should be a consolidation, mergers and acquisition. That small country does not need 9 banks. It doesn't. It needs more ATM machines. It needs more. You know that, Shelton.
And folks, if just joining us, this is Ashford Garley Live on Bridge Radio Africa. The program comes on 3 days a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Tonight we have with us the economist Sam P. Jackson as our special guest tonight. Shelton will come in after this. Mr. Jackson, what other options do the government of Liberia have to solve the problem of no liquidity in the banking system?
Okay. The first thing the government has to do, the first thing is to call the banks to a conference and let us know from an in-depth examination of the financial system in those banks if they're capital impaired. And if they're capital impaired, what's causing the capital impairment? Let's look at the quality of the loans on their books, the assets on the book, and let's see about writing them off and bringing in new money into the banking system. The second thing is let's find a way to discount that $65 million that is owed to the commercial banks, and let's get that money in there. The third thing is let's find a creative way of recapitalizing the central bank. The central bank is undercapitalized. The central bank is bleeding money out of there because it spends, I think, about $9 billion a year just on operational expenses. And it's not a commercial bank. It's not an income generating bank. So you need to recapitalize it. One of the ways that the central bank can earn good money if it had another way of using its reserves at the Federal Reserve. It's just keeping the reserve, the $250 to $300 million, it's keeping the reserve at the Federal Reserve with no interest. It just sits there. It doesn't make any kind of sense. It has to have a secondary and tertiary way of investing those reserves in short-term notes to make an income to cover their operational expenses. But you can't have the entire reserve at the Federal Reserve Bank in New York not earning any income, and you say you're running your reserve bank. That's not banking. That's not even good payday loan operations you're running there.
All right, so
Mr. Jackson, we'll go to the telephone lines.
yes, Mr. Jackson, you lay out a lot of things here. Could you tell me off your head right now who are some of the best economists in the country? That we could tap into to bring hope to Liberia, because it sounds like the only name that is reverberating is Samuel Toye. And for 3 years now, this country is in a place where it's dark financially. You and I know it. So who are some of the best economists, including yourself, that could come together, irrespective of what the CDC want you guys or not, but do something to rescue this country?
Okay, look. There's nobody that can wave a magic wand to bring immediate economic relief to Liberia. So you're not going to have a John Maynard Keynes who come from his grave, or any one of the Adam Smith that come from his grave. Even if they came from the grave, they will not be able to solve the Liberian problem. A team has to solve Liberia's problem. We have to do the heavy lifting. Governance, an enabling economic environment, rule of law, decrease corruption. Those are things that build economies. Economy is not built because some economic company, Samuel Jackson, comes in, he speaks fancy economic language, comes from the London School of Economics.
That's what people say you're doing.
Well,
that's what people say you're doing.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm doing it, but I'm giving you practical solutions to it. I mean, and I can demonstrate, my CV, what I've done, work for banks, work for institutions, and I've written 2 books. And I'm going to the best econ school on the planet, and I'm doing projects for LSE. So, I have a CV. I'm not just talking. Okay. And I also wrote a 44-page document that I read here that I gave Samuel Toye in July of 2019, which he still owes me $5,000 for, and he's not paying man enough
to pay
my money,
$5,000.
Yeah. So, so I have done my part. And also, I was in Liberia, we organized the National Economic Dialogue. I wrote the synthesis document. I did the analysis of the economy. It was used as a platform for 17 recommendations. So I've done my part. And I'm always running my mouth on Facebook, coming to platforms like these and giving my ideas. But not one individual can do that, can solve Liberia's problem. We need a team. We need a team.
So call some of the names. We want to be able to bring some of those people on.
You see, because I don't want to put people in difficult positions to say that this person can come and this person can solve the problem. That's not how economists work. That's not how economists grow. Economists grow from heavy lifting, doing very hard work, discipline, governance, expanding economic output, increasing domestic revenue mobilization. That's how economists grow. And then rebasing your economy to make sure that a significant portion of the informal economy is brought into the formal sector, decreasing informality, fixing the financial architecture. These are how economists grow. Economists don't grow because you bring in a Samuel Jackson or you bring in a Samuel Toye. You need 1,000 Samuel Toyes. You need 1,000 Samuel Jacksons. So Mr. Toye believes that going around with his iPhone, with the entire budget in his iPhone, and everything in his head, that's the reason why you haven't seen any progress in the last 3 years, because you need a team. You need a project delivery unit that is attached to the presidency, which will monitor and evaluate the performance of all the sectoral ministries. Samuel Toye cannot tell you how much cassava was produced in Liberia last year. I dare him. He can't tell you how much rice was produced in Liberia last year. He cannot tell you how many building permits was given last year. Maybe he may tell you how many kilometers of roads were paved. He can probably tell you that, but he cannot tell you the functionality of the economy that drives aggregate demand and drives output and income. That's why they call it the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning. If his only task is to pay salaries and boast that they're paying salaries on time, and that happens to be their major economic development achievement. Then you have a problem. All street lights on Broad Street.
I will hold you right
Street
there.
lights on Broad Street.
We are now at the top of the hour. I will hold you right there and go to the telephone line. What, Honorable Samuel Toy, just so you know, the invitation is all yours.
Absolutely.
To come on your Bridge Radio Africa and have your seat as well. We'll now go to the telephone line. The number to call is 317-353-5642. That's 317-353-5642. And I believe we'll have a call on the line. 774 is the area code. Hello, caller.
How you doing, Ashford? This is your man, Dwally again from Boston, Mass.
Welcome, bro.
How you doing?
Good.
Hey, Pastor, what's going on? Listen.
Hey, my brother, simplify.
We're getting through, and the topic is a real solution to our problem. But I want to differ with him on one issue. The issue of trying to leverage our resources to generate income. This is the worst thing that we can do for Liberia. There are better options that Liberia can address to improve the economy. And people that are listening, like I always say, the solutions are out there. People have to really incorporate some of the solutions. One thing I did see on the show, before I go ahead, if I was fortunate when Tua first came to power, I wrote a paper for him. Anybody can Google this paper. Some of the solutions that we have to do. Look, there are models that we can build off of. The South Koreans, it's a bunch of models. Google leveraging Liberia's resources to lift the pro-poor agenda. Or you can Google common sense economics. Look, our entire real GDP is like $2 billion. We have huge potential. In fact, I put a challenge out there. When Samuel Eto'o was talking about the World Bank gave him $48 million, it was a celebration in the country. Give me that much, and I would generate 100 million jobs in 6 months to a year. We can present it.
Are we losing?
Institutions. Listen now. I'm almost done. I believe Liberia does not have the institutions to actually go ahead and be mining these resources. We have to develop them within before we can actually go towards resources. Okay, that's my issue tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We have 951 number. Tell us your name, please. The last 4 digits of your number, 2725. 2725, going once, going twice. Okay, we have a 302 number. Hello, tell us your name. Hello, caller. Hello. Are you there? Okay, we have a 951 number. Hello.
Hello, sir. My name is Henry G. Shapolu. I'm calling you from California.
You're live on the radio. Go ahead and make your point.
Yes, sir. I still have a quick question for Mr. Jackson. He overheard him talking about the value system in our mineral resources, the iron ore, the stuff. So I don't want to ask him what metric has he used to know the actual value of all the mineral resources we have that make him to know that within we can generate about $15 trillion. I just want to know has there been any time where they have to really know the actual mineral we have in stock?
Thank you.
I don't want to know where he. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, caller.
Yes, hello. Am I on?
Yeah, you live on the radio.
Yeah, Sam, good evening. And Ashford and Shelton is Dean Wilson. Sam, I really appreciate the bountiful knowledge you've offered. I have a few simple questions, and let's just keep it at the level of our people's understanding. You talk about trust, and we all can agree that there's no trust in the printing of money. But Sam, the reality is there's also a dual currency situation in Liberia. I wonder your idea on maybe how involved we can get, not usurping the authority of printing money to a sovereign or to any international organization. But our culture is we always defer to the US, we always defer to the IMF and other. Say when we have a crisis, is there any possibility that, in fact, based on the fact that we have a dual currency like US dollar, and to see if we can get some experts, some oversight in the printing of the money? And the second question I have for you is, how can we retrieve the mutilated notes? Frankly, I would just leave it right there. Just opine on that, because I think this is a situation that looks to be much more complex, and there's no trust in government. There's no trust in the central bank. So I just wanted to hear your opinion on those two situations.
Thank you. 2 more callers, then we'll go back to Mr. Jackson. We have 7612. 240 area code. Hello, tell us your name.
My name is Musa Sako. I'm calling from Washington, D.C.
Okay, you live on the
I
radio.
really, really enjoy this show. I want to thank Samuel Jackson, sorry. He has given a lot of recommendations and solutions. Myself, I'm an economist, but listening to him, he is well educated, and I want to thank him. And I don't have any other recommendations because he has given all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have a 347 number. The last four digits of it.
How you doing, Mr. Garley?
Go ahead.
My question is,
tell us your name, please. What is your name?
My name is Sean. I'm calling from New York.
Okay, you live on the radio.
My question is, Mr. Jackson, is Samuel Tour really fit for the finance minister job? That's my question. Is he the right now?
Thank you. Okay, we'll hold the callers there and have Mr. Jackson give a few responses, and then we'll go back to the telephone line. Mr. Jackson.
Thank you very much. Okay. First of all, there are greenfield iron ore mines, meaning that they've never been mined, and little exploration has been done. But there are others where there have been there are brownfields where some degree of exploration has been done. Okay, if you take bombing, where the Western cluster is, it is a brownfield. We know how much the deposit is, about almost like 500 million tons. Okay, if you look at NIOC, you're looking at about 450 tons. Okay, now the other mines, the U.S. Geological Survey, which is the global, what should I say, the global #1 agency in the world for making projections on the occurrence in terms of what they call the mineralization. These are the projections that they have given over the years. And now, of course, today, before you used to have to send explorers there and the dig and all that stuff, but now you can do computer imaging from abroad, and I forgot the name of it. Okay, but they can do it and they can tell. In fact, one of the ways that Bombing Hills was discovered by Lancel K. Christie, the American major, was that he was flying over this mountain. He saw this blue mountain. That's how he knew that they had iron in the mountain. So when he left the military, he came. But Putu Iron Ore Mining Company have done some exploration on the Putu site. In fact, they sold it to Severstar for almost $167 million because they did discover between 4 to 7 billion tons there. So a combination of good guesses based upon degree of mineral intelligence has provided that. But in fact, remember I told you that Wologisi may be worth maybe 20 to 30 billion tons, but I did not tell you 30 billion tons. I just gave you the approximate value of Putu, the Western cluster, and I didn't even put Timo, Bopolu, Bassa Hills, which BHP Billiton they have. I've never done that. I just said 10 billion tons. 10 billion tons at $150 a ton today. That's $1.5 trillion. You can take it anywhere to the bank. That's just the way it is. Okay. Now, Mr. Jim Wilson, he and I had a conversation today. We're talking about the printing of money. There is something innately wrong with the culture when we don't trust ourselves. A 173-year-old country shouldn't be going outside of its borders to print its own currency. Think about that, Volcano Shelton. The sunken cost, okay, the investment to build a world-class printing thing, maybe 50, 60, $70 million. It could have been achieved years and years ago. So now you're going, every time you say you want to go print money, you're paying $27 million. But if you have your own bureau of engraving and printing where you can mint coins and stuff, and you have made that investment years ago, it will be paying off today. He talked about the dual currency. The dual currency is a double-edged sword. The dual currency was very good in the post-war era, in the immediate post-war era, when Liberia lost 90% of its productive capacity with no export, we needed a currency that was international in nature, was a reserve currency of the world, to act as the foundation for trading, investment, and economic development in Liberia. So we created that dual currency. But now, the dual currency is really hurting us. We need to de-dollarize. We need to go to something called financial de-dollarization. Financial de-dollarization, it means that you want to have more and more of goods and purchases in Liberian dollar. That creates a demand for the local currency. And the US dollar becomes only like an international reserve currency that you use for what? Imports and for international transactions, okay? Mr. Sean was asking me about Samuel Twe. Frankly, I think Samuel Twe has cognitive ability. He's a smart student. But Mr. Twe should be operating at an analyst level at the present stage of his life as an analyst, not as a policy maker, not as a guy who's guiding an entire country with 5 million people, because the skills that are involved in the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning, Samuel Twe didn't work anywhere for a long period of time as a young man, then to grow up in finance and banking and economics. Look at the CVs of the central bank governors of the ECOWAS countries. He doesn't even come close to that. Okay, but since it is a political position and his boss man, has a lot of confidence in him, then he has to go and bring in the talent and the expertise to prop him up. But I was speaking to a very famous Liberian lady on Sunday. And she told me, what Samuel Twe problem is, he doesn't want George Weah to know that he's not the only economist on the planet. And think about this. During Ellen's government, she brought in Steve, Eric Wecker from the Harvard Growth Institute, Steve Radley. She brought in Mario O'Brien from Macquarie University. Then she brought in the whole team from the Overseas Development Institute of the British government. Then the Swedish International Development Agency. And then she brought me in on the high-level panel to create the Sustainable Development Goals. If she wants to do anything in terms of the public view, the PUP scandal, she brought me in. She brought me in to check on the county development. I'm sure you heard about that, of VOLCANO. I spent almost like 7 weeks going to 15 counties or 73 districts to make a determination whether the county development funds were being spent. I went all over Liberia and wrote a report for her. That's the kind of person that Ellen is. But Twe does not have an outside team. He needs an outside team and a good inside team with a project delivery unit that can determine and that can monitor and evaluate and benchmark government economic development priorities. Can't do it by yourself. He's not an agronomist. He's not an agricultural economist.
And
he's
again,
not a fiscal officer.
And again,
he's not a scientist. You know, you need multidisciplinary skills to accomplish all these objectives.
We're almost running out of time. Let me just run through these callers real quick, 1 minute per caller, and then we'll come to you for your closing statement so we can call this a night. We have a 508 number, the last 4 digits of the number, 7149. Hello, tell us your name.
Yeah, Giant, how you doing, man? This is Darlene from Worcester, Mass.
1 minute, please.
Yeah, so Giant, what I would say to you is this kind of sensitive issue when you discuss it or you bring in hosts to discuss it, you bring people from the opposite side, like from the government, from CBL. You got Dr. Dukley at CBL.
And again,
Dr. Dukley should be somebody should come from the CBL to counter argue what Mr. Johnson is. All Mr. Johnson is doing today is lecturing us. There is no counter argument. We don't have anybody from the other side to tell what is actually going on.
Mr. Wawu, we have a history of inviting these people. Mr. Wawu, have a history of inviting these people, and they would just don't show up. You know, we have tried on several occasions. Thank you.
Cool.
Okay, we have a 302 number, the last 4 digits of the number, 4584.
That's fine. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Garley. My name is Amos Sango.
1 minute, please.
From Delaware.
Now, please, the time is short. I have a presentation. Hello?
Go ahead. 1 minute, please.
Yes, please. At the end of the show, could you please post Mr. Jackson's email address so that, because I have a presentation that has to do with the fiscal policy in Liberia and how the government can generate revenue in Liberia as well as transform the infrastructure of Liberia. With my experience in doing geocoding the entire country, starting with major cities. So if you post his email, please, his email address, so that I can, connect with him to see what he makes of it, because I'm not getting much time here. But basically,
thank you.
What my plan.
Thank you, sir. We have a 717 number, 2909. Tell us your name.
Oh, this is James Dale calling from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
1 minute, please.
Yeah, I enjoy Mr. Jackson in some kind of way, but what Mr. Jackson fails to realize is, I don't know how many economies he carry to Liberia. Liberia depends on security. Security is number one, and patriotism is number two. When you don't get those people, you don't get this in place, nothing. I don't care what kind of economy he carry in Liberia. He said when he went to Liberia, he had bodyguard, he had all 15 boys living with him. When he went to toilet, behind him. So he knows the security system is bad in the country. And patriotism, people are now patriots to their own country.
Thank you.
He said December 12th, go print and go pay 200 here, he budget at 3 million. So tell me now, where is the patriotism pay $10 for peace or $5 for peace? So where is the patriotism? A lie. Oh.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We have a 267 number, 3599. Tell us your name.
Hi, ASHFORD GARLEY. My name is Cassius Massa. I'm calling from Louisville, Kentucky. I just have a little question for Mr. Jackson. Mr. Jackson, we have a lot of financial experts in our society. I'll name some are you and the former finance ministers. The both of them are left the finance ministry. So why you think it would be better that you guys open a chat room and try to always communicate with one another, come up with some proposals that you guys can invite Mr. Tue in there, and that of the NRA boss and the central bank governor in there, and give them your proposals and see if they don't abide by what you guys, wherever you guys propose, then you can come public and let us know.
Thank you so much. Mr. Emmanuel Tor is on the line. Hello, Mr. Tor.
Hello, ASHFORD. There's a saying in Liberia. It says that if the devil can dance, no amount of uniform change will make a difference. Whether it's a guild devil or a bastard devil. Look, our problem is there's no commitment from our leadership for development to change. Sam alluded to two issues. One regards to banks. Let's assume that the conference he wants to call, he asked the bank, what is the capital impairment? And we know that the non-performing loans are one of the issues. And who owe those non-performing loans? Government officials. If you were to publish every single deficient loan, I would guarantee 90% is owned by the government of Liberians and the officials. Also, if you were to take all of our assets and put it into a mining company, and let's say somebody gave us 50 billion, what are we going to do with that money without any developmental plan? And that is our problem. Is our government needs to go back and say, are we sincere enough to improve the lives of Liberians? And I will submit to you, no, we administration have no commitment. No amount of money will change our condition.
Thank you.
We just have to wait and hope that the next government will do exactly the recommendations that Sam is alluding to.
Thank you, Mr. Toll. And that does it for callers tonight. We'll go back to the room to Mr. Jackson as he gives us his partner statement tonight. Mr. Jackson.
Look, I don't understand why people think economic is a talk fest. Bring Dukley, bring Tue, bring Maynard King so you can come and talk. We don't want to talk. I don't find pleasure in talking. I find pleasure in doing my econometric models. I find pleasure in doing my concept documents. I find pleasure in putting together real plans for implementation. I don't want to have a discussion, a brute force You know, the thing we did the other day on one other platform there with Mr. Samuel Twe yelling and carrying on. I don't want to yell with Samuel Twe. I go to LSE, the best econ school on the planet, where we have civilized discussion, and we go, we implement, we write. We give summative statements, we do econometric models, we write reports, we do it APA style, we do inline citation, we do references, and we give critical analysis, we do cross-sectional surveys, we do longitudinal analysis, and we give it to people for implementation. And then we have outcome indicators associated with that, people who are project analysts and project people who monitor and evaluate the outcome. That's how you grow an economy. You don't grow an economy. How many times do you think Jeanette Yelling is going to be coming on some show to be yelling and screaming at some old economist like Sam Jackson? She that busy running the treasury. She got analysts in there. She got economists in there. They're putting models together. They're doing T-bills. They come here with stimulus packages. They come here with real programs and plans. I'm not going to argue with Samuel Twe anymore. If you think he know everything, like he beat me. He the smartest man in the world. I'm not going to have a discussion with my little son, Dr. Dukley, at the central bank to come on a platform to come and find out who know more book. That's all. The stupidity in the heads of Liberians. If Mr. Dukley and Mr. Twe, they're looking for competent people, let's produce our CVs and our academic credentials and where we've worked and what we can do. Let them pick among us and let us be like a council of economic advisors. Or if they want a project delivery, let bring project professionals to do this job. Because let me tell you something. If Liberia is okay, the way Liberia was semi-okay with Ellen, I used to make $200,000-$300,000 a year. Easily. I had a gas station, I had a bakery, I had a restaurant. One social impact, one social impact assessment document, 40 pages, is $50,000. One linkage plan is $30,000. One business plan is $5,000 to $10,000. There are consulting companies in Liberia like Suba Bella and Associates. The guys make like $500,000 or $1 million a year. So if Liberia is okay, I will make a lot of money. If the banks need capital, they need a concept document, or they need somebody. I have a rare degree in banking, okay, a rare degree in banking. To do a presentation, to bring money into the banking system, we can do that.
Mr. Jackson.
So we don't need to be fighting with each other, arguing. Let Samuel Twe come. Let Samuel Twe be yelling, and Dr. Dukley be yelling. The other senior female be yelling and carrying on. That's not how you build a country.
Okay.
So I'm not interested in debating Samuel Twe anymore. If Samuel Twe does well, we will see it in the income. Jobs will be created. You will see aggregate demand. People will be better fed. They will be healthier. Liberia will be safer. And I can go there and take my little small social security where I get and go enjoy myself in Liberia.
Mr. Jackson, why Liberians don't own banks in Liberia?
Liberians don't own banks in Liberia. The reason why Liberians don't own building material stores in Liberia, why Liberians don't own fishing businesses, why Liberians don't own many things. It is something that is wrong. It's all about dialogue and talking and talking and talking. The bread, what my mother used to make, they're calling it fuller bread today. Fuller bread. The bread my mother used to make, a Bassa woman from Riverside used to make that bread, they call it fuller bread today. They look at all the sectors that the foreigners control. The spare parts, the Nigerians and the Lebanese. The little shop, Nigerians and Fullers. You go to the gold mines, Nigerians, Malians, and Burkinabes. We got 9 banks. 8 are Nigerian owned. The Liberian diaspora, 50,000 people giving $1,000, that's $50 million. That would be the biggest bank in Liberia. With 50,000 Liberians just investing $1,000. And you don't have to give $1,000 in one day or a period of 12 months. Divide 1,000 by 12 months or 20 months. $50 million. That is a bank that can do agriculture. That is a bank that can do infrastructure. That is the bank that can do mortgage finance. Is a bank that can do equipment leasing. That is a bank that can set up the Liberian Diaspora Bank. So I'm giving you all these ideas. I've been doing it for 44 years. But they say Sam doesn't talk to me. But Sam doesn't writing. Sam doesn't tell you, say, go open a diaspora bank. What will stop you from opening a diaspora bank? The other thing is because you either think Sam Jackson will take the idea and say, oh, I don't want a recommended A, or Sam Jackson will boast about A, but don't do it. If you go find somebody who had a degree in banking or who not work in bank to put together the concept idea to put the Liberian Diaspora Bank together. Don't come to me. I'm not the only. Look, I know young Liberian boys, about 10 of them, senior vice president in banks in America. I will call one of them. Samia Mayela is a vice president, not even 30 years, or maybe 30 something. Okay? He's a vice president of Bank of America. He's head of their payment system. He has 11 payment patents to his name. He's on Facebook. Samuel, Moryalla, Samuel Mayela.
And that's how we do it for the rest of the night, Mr.
Let me just finish. There's another kid.
2 minutes to finish up, please.
Yeah, Christopher Neal Jr., senior vice president, JP Morgan Chase. There are many, there are about 10, 15 of them. Engineers from Finland, from this place, they're all over the place. Put a link in and see the quality of Liberian professionals and capital on LinkedIn. You have enough people to build your country. You don't need me. I'm 68. I'm too old. Go fix it for me to come retire and eat my edible soup and my plantain soup. That's what I want to do.
Thank you. Mr. Jackson, as always, it was great having you on. And you know this is your home. We'll be looking forward to seeing you some other time. Thank you so much, Mr. Jackson.
I want to plan on talking, man. Let's do projects, man. So we can my man, I went to South Africa. I stayed 34 days there.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson.
Enjoying myself. I want to do the same thing, Liberia, but I want to go to the Royal Hotel.
Okay,
you know?
Thank you so much. All right. Okay, that was the voice of Mr. Samuel P. Jackson. Shelton, we had him tonight. You heard him for yourself.
But I think that's what Liberian people are tired with, talk, and no action. And of course, he did say some of the things and the reasons why. When you have a few group of people have usurped power and they're holding on to it, and they think that, they don't want anyone else to come and give bright ideas and to support, the country. If the CDC government fails, Liberia fails. If the CDC government does well, Liberia does well. So it's important for them to be inviting, to open up the corridors. The president came in his inaugural address and said that Liberians will not be spectators in their own economy. But just what you're asking, why Liberians don't have a bank? He said Liberians don't even have building material stores. They don't even have some of the top businesses in the country. And even if they have some of the top businesses in the country, if they were in opposition, they're strangled. And you and I know that, Ashford, and we cannot run this country divisively. And that's why we're where we are. So there's so much more to be done. And I will hope that this government in these 3 years will be, reawakened by all of these things we'll continue to talk about, because that's why holding the country back.
Thank you, my brother. Again, we'll be back Monday night for the fresh, brand new edition of Ashford GARLEY Live. With that, Shelton, enjoy the rest of the weekend. I travel next week for a business meeting. Week after next, I will be in West Africa, Liberia. Enjoy the rest of the night, Shelton.
Good night, and you have a good one. We'll catch up tomorrow.
All right. And folks, I'm afraid that's all the time we have to be with you tonight. God willing, Monday night, same time, same place. British Radio Africa. And with that said, please allow me to borrow the wordings of the wise man. Tough times don't last, tough people do. The height of a man is never known until he rises, because there's no second chance to make that first impression. Don't see okra and swallow bone, because you can't hide your nakedness from beef and bucket. When God bless you, don't see that medicine. When white men know your friend black man. And I'm telling you, trust no shadow in the dark, because a bald-headed man does not walk on the moonlight. When you see the crawfish comes from underneath the water and see the crocodile he's sweating, don't see the lie. Ashford the Giant, the Now You Know Me Garley, the medicine of the microphone, the golden voice of Liberia, the broadcast commissioner. Have a great weekend.
Mama na motema na kokate tikana binisa o.